The fluorescent lights of Prestige Motors gleamed off the polished marble floor as Bradley Sterling watched a grease-stained biker push open the glass door. Bradley's lip curled. The man looked like he'd crawled out of a dumpster. Leather vest, so worn it was nearly gray, hands black with engine oil, boots caked in mud that was now tracking across Bradley's pristine showroom. Security, Bradley hissed into his headset, eyes never leaving the intruder who was now running his filthy fingers across a $64,000 CVO road glide. We've got a vagrant situation. What Bradley Sterling didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know as he signaled the guard, was that the vagrant he was about to humiliate carried more cash in his gym bag than Bradley would earn in 5 years. And in exactly 47 minutes, Bradley would watch through tears as that same man walked out with a deal that would haunt him for the rest of his miserable life. The basement of the Golden Eagles clubhouse smelled like decades of spilled beer, leather, and the particular musk of brotherhood that no amount of bleach could erase. Vince Vault Kowalski sat at a scarred wooden table, surrounded by stacks of cash that would make a cartel accountant nervous. $100 bills. 50s. The occasional 20, though Vince tossed those into a separate pile with disgust. Tip money, he muttered, his fingers moving with the practiced efficiency of a bank teller. Which, ironically, he'd been before the Eagles recruited him 15 years ago for his particular genius with numbers. The money was clean. Mostly. 3 construction companies, a chain of tattoo parlors, 2 bars, and a motorcycle repair shop. All legitimate. All profitable. All feeding cash into the club's coffers faster than Vince could launder it into respectability. Not that kind of laundering. The legal kind. The boring kind that involved accountants and tax returns and making sure the IRS stayed happy. Vault. The voice boomed down the stairs before the boots did. Bull, the club president, descended with the grace of a falling refrigerator. At 62, he still looked like he could bench press a Harley. You got that money ready? Vince didn't look up, his fingers still dancing across the bills. Define ready. I've got it counted. That's about as ready as cash gets. Smartass. But Bull was grinning. Those 5 Nomad brothers earned this. They ran interference on that shipment when the Iron Wolves tried to jump us. Lost their bikes doing it. Every single one totaled. Vince finally looked up, pushing his reading glasses. Yes, reading glasses, because even badass accountants get old, up his nose. You want me to replace 5 motorcycles? Not replace. Upgrade. Top of the line. The kind of bikes that make grown men weep. I want them riding machines that say thank you for taking a bullet for your brothers. Bull's face softened, just a fraction. Cash. No paper trail. No questions. How very tax efficient of you, Vince deadpanned. He stood, joints cracking in protest. At 42, he was one of the younger members of the Eagles' leadership, but his body bore the scars of a misspent youth. I'll need to move about 300 grand. 300. Bull whistled. Jesus, Vault. I was thinking maybe. You want the best? That's the best. 5 CVO road glides, fully customized, with the Milwaukee 8 117 engine. 105 horsepower, 126 foot-pounds of torque. 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. Those bikes don't just say thank you. They scream it at 110 decibels. Bull clapped him on the shoulder hard enough to bruise. This is why you handle the money, brother. I'd have walked in asking for whatever was shiny. Vince turned back to the table and began stuffing banded stacks of bills into a battered Nike gym bag that looked like it had survived a war. Because it had. The bag had been with him since Desert Storm, back when he was a combat engineer who could calculate blast radiuses in his head while under fire. You going like that? Bull eyed Vince's outfit with amusement. Vince looked down at himself. Oil-stained jeans with a hole in one knee. Boots that were more duct tape than leather. A white t-shirt that hadn't been white since the Clinton administration. And his pride and joy. A leather vest so worn, so beaten, so absolutely destroyed by years of road and weather that it was practically transparent in places. Why wouldn't I? Vault, you're about to walk into a dealership with enough cash to buy a small house. Maybe clean up. Vince zipped the bag closed with a sound like a judge's gavel. Bull, I've got $17 million in investment portfolios. I own 4 properties across 3 states. Last year, I made more money in capital gains than most Americans make in a lifetime. He slung the bag over his shoulder. And I'm going to walk into that dealership looking exactly like what I am. a man who doesn't give a single fuck what people think. Bull laughed, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. Brother, you're either going to have the best shopping experience of your life or the worst. There's no middle ground. Vince headed for the stairs. That's kind of the point. The dealership squatted on the corner of 5th and Mercantile like a glass and steel monument to excess. Prestige Motors. The name was etched in chrome letters 3 feet tall, visible from half a mile away. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Vince could see the kind of motorcycles that made his accountant's heart sing. Limited editions, custom builds, bikes that cost more than most people's cars. He'd done his research. Prestige Motors moved more high-end motorcycles in this city than anyone else. They had connections with Harley-Davidson's custom vehicle operations division. They could get the bikes he wanted, configured exactly how he wanted them, in a matter of days instead of months. The parking lot was full of luxury cars. Mercedes, BMW, a Porsche that probably cost more than Vince's first house. He rolled up on his own bike, a Frankenstein monster he'd built himself from salvaged parts, held together with spite and expertise, and killed the engine. The bike died with a cough that sounded vaguely insulting. Through the window, he could see the sales floor. Gleaming motorcycles on rotating platforms. Leather couches that probably cost more than actual motorcycles. A coffee bar, a fucking coffee bar, where customers could sip espresso while contemplating their financial ruin. And salespeople. Young, attractive, dressed like they were selling yachts instead of bikes. They moved across the floor with the predatory grace of sharks who could smell credit scores in the water. Vince pushed open the door. The first thing that hit him was the cold. The air conditioning was set to Arctic. The second thing was the smell. Leather, yes, but also some kind of expensive cologne or air freshener that made his nose itch. The third thing was the silence. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. And in that moment, Vince saw exactly what they saw. A middle-aged biker with 3 days of stubble, clothes that smelled like motor oil and yesterday's cigarettes, tracking mud across their precious marble floor. A young woman at the reception desk, nameplate reading Brittany, looked up from her computer, and Vince watched her expression shift from professional welcome to barely concealed disgust in the space of a heartbeat. Can I help you? The pause before help said everything. I'm looking at bikes, Vince said simply. Of course. Brittany's smile was the kind you'd give to a lost child. We have some pre-owned inventory in our secondary lot. If you'd like, I can have someone walk you. I'm looking at those. Vince pointed at the Seavio Road glides on the main floor. Brittany's smile froze. Oh, those are. Well, those are our premium models. Very exclusive. Very. She seemed to be searching for a polite word. Expensive. How expensive? The base model starts at $64,000. She said it like she was announcing a terminal diagnosis. Vince nodded thoughtfully. And if I wanted 5 of them? Behind the reception desk, he heard someone choke on their coffee. Bradley Sterling had been having a good morning. Excellent, even. He'd closed a deal on a street glide special before noon. $28,000, with enough financing add-ons to bump his commission into 4 figures. He'd sweet-talked Mrs. Henderson into upgrading her husband's anniversary present from a Sportster to a Fat Boy, adding another $6,000 to his monthly total. By his calculations, he was on track to make his sales quota by the 20th, which would give him 2 weeks of coasting. More importantly, it would give him enough money to make a significant dent in the $47,000 he owed to some very impatient people in Atlantic City. So when he saw Brittany talking to what appeared to be a homeless person who'd wandered in off the street, Bradley's first instinct was protective. Prestige Motors had an image to maintain. They couldn't have vagrants bothering their clientele. His second instinct, when he heard the vagrant claim he wanted to buy 5 Seavio Road glides, was amusement. His third instinct was annoyance. Bradley crossed the showroom floor with the confident stride of a man who'd sold bikes to doctors, lawyers, and the occasional B-list celebrity. He was 30 years old, impeccably dressed in a slim-fit suit that cost more than it should, and he'd cultivated an image of polished professionalism that had served him well. Right up until it didn't. Sir. Bradley's voice carried across the showroom, drawing attention from the other sales staff. Can I help you with something? Vince had been examining one of the road glides, running his fingers along the fuel tank with the careful appreciation of someone who understood engineering. He looked up, and Bradley got his first good look at the man. Mid-40s. weathered face, hands that were so stained with grease and oil that no amount of scrubbing would ever get them clean. And those eyes, sharp, calculating, missing nothing. I want to test sit this one, Vince said. I'm sorry, that's not possible. Bradley positioned himself between Vince and the motorcycle like a Secret Service agent protecting the president. This is a $64,000 motorcycle. We can't have. He gestured vaguely at Vince's general existence. That near it. That, your vest. The zippers. The metal hardware. It could scratch the paint. Bradley's smile was patronizing in the way that made people want to punch him in the throat. I'm sure you understand. These are very delicate machines. Vince looked down at his vest, then back at Bradley. Delicate. A motorcycle designed to go 110 miles per hour on the highway. Delicate. Premium paint jobs require premium care, Bradley said, his voice taking on the tone of someone explaining reality to a child. Now, if you're seriously interested in a motorcycle, and I mean seriously interested, not just window shopping, I can show you some of our pre-owned inventory. We have a very nice 2019 Street 750 in the back lot. Only one owner, low miles. That might be more in your... He paused, eyes traveling from Vince's worn boots to his oil-stained vest. Price range. My price range, Vince repeated flatly. Look, I get it. Bradley's voice dropped to what he probably thought was a sympathetic level. Bikes are cool. I love bikes. We all love bikes. But these, he gestured at the gleaming CVOs. These aren't for everyone. These are investment-grade motorcycles. The people who buy these have excellent credit, stable income, and frankly, another pointed look at Vince's appearance. They present well. Vince was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, and it was the kind of smile that should have set off alarm bells in Bradley's head. So you're saying I can't afford this bike? I'm saying that financing a motorcycle of this caliber requires a certain financial profile. And given, Bradley waved his hand in a gesture that encompassed Vince's entire existence. I'm trying to save you the embarrassment of a credit rejection. That's very thoughtful, Vince said. Tell me something. If I wanted to buy 5 of these, cash, today, could you make that happen? Bradley's laugh was loud enough to make Brittany wince at her desk. 5. Cash. He was still laughing. Brother, I don't think you could afford the sales tax on one of these bikes, let alone 5. The deposit alone would be, Jesus, do you even know what these cost? Enlighten me. $64,000. Each. That's $320,000 for 5 bikes. Plus tax. Plus setup fees. Plus customization if you want anything beyond stock. Bradley was enjoying himself now, playing to the small audience of sales staff who'd gathered to watch. That's $350,000. In cash. Today. That's correct, Vince said. So unless you're walking around with a duffel bag full of money, Bradley's smile was vicious. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're tracking mud on our floor, you're bothering our staff, and frankly, you're making our real customers uncomfortable. Vince glanced around the showroom. There were no other customers. Just sales staff, all watching the show. Your real customers, Vince repeated. People who can actually afford to shop here. Now, Bradley pulled out his phone. I'm going to call security. You can leave on your own, or... I am leaving, Vince said. He turned toward the door, then paused. Question. That commission you'd make on 5 bikes. What would that be? Bradley's finger hovered over his phone. Why? Just curious. Humor me. Our commission structure is confidential. But Bradley couldn't help himself, couldn't resist the urge to brag. On a deal that size? With the financing add-ons and the customization packages? I'd be looking at 30, maybe 35,000. What? Just wanted to know exactly what you're losing, Vince said, and walked out. Vince had made it exactly 3 steps past the door when Bradley's voice rang out behind him. Security. We have a vagrant harassing customers. Vince stopped, turned, and watched as a man the size of a refrigerator emerged from a side office. The security guard, nameplate reading Dennis, looked uncomfortable with his assignment. Sir, Dennis said, his voice apologetic. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. Already leaving, Vince pointed out. He's trespassing. Bradley had followed them out, his phone now recording. I want him escorted off the property. And I want him banned. Put his picture in the system. Dennis shifted his weight. Mr. Sterling, he's already. Did I stutter? Escort him. Now. Vince met Dennis's eyes and saw the apology there. The guard was just doing his job. No point making his life harder. It's fine, Vince said. He let Dennis walk him to the edge of the property line, where his Frankenstein bike sat cooling in the sun. Behind them, Bradley stood in the doorway of Prestige Motors, arms crossed, watching like a lord surveying his kingdom. Sorry about that, Dennis muttered. Sterling's an asshole. Don't worry about it. Vince swung his leg over the bike, the gym bag still slung across his shoulder. $300,000 in cash, and he'd just been thrown out like trash. He looked at Prestige Motors, all glass and chrome and arrogance. Then he looked to the left. Rusty's garage. The sign was hand-painted, faded by years of sun. The building itself was a cinder-block rectangle that had probably been built in the 70s and hadn't been updated since. There were 3 motorcycles in the lot, all used, all looking like they'd been there a while. And sitting on a plastic chair outside the office, looking like he'd lost his last friend in the world, was an old man with a beer gut and a Vietnam veteran cap. Vince kicked his bike to life and rode the 20 yards to Rusty's garage. Rusty, Patterson had been staring at the same piece of paper for 20 minutes. It was a letter from his bank, and the words, "Final Notice," were prominently featured. He'd read it so many times he could recite it from memory. $72,000 in arrears. Foreclosure proceedings to begin in 30 days. Please contact our office immediately to discuss payment options. Payment options? That was rich. Like he had options. The garage had been his life for 40 years. He'd built it from nothing after coming back from Vietnam, when the nightmares were so bad he couldn't hold down a regular job. Turned out, working with his hands on motorcycles was the only thing that kept him sane. The repetitive nature of it. The logic. The way a broken thing could become whole again if you just knew where to look. But times had changed. The big dealerships had moved in. Places like Prestige Motors next door, with their marble floors and their fancy coffee. The young guys with money wanted their bikes serviced in air-conditioned comfort, not in Rusty's grease-stained shop that smelled like WD-40 and old tobacco. And then Martha had gotten sick. Cancer. The kind that ate through their savings faster than chemotherapy ate through her body. She was in remission now, thank God, but the medical bills had buried them. Rusty folded the letter and tucked it into his shirt pocket, right over his heart. Maybe that was fitting. The garage was his heart, in a way. The rumble of a motorcycle pulled him from his thoughts. He looked up to see a bike that made his mechanic's soul weep, a Frankenstein monster of salvaged parts, held together with what looked like baling wire and prayer. But the rider handled it like he'd built it himself. The bike pulled into Rusty's lot and died with a sound like a mechanical death rattle. The rider, middle-aged guy in a vest that had seen better decades, climbed off and looked at Rusty with sharp eyes. They kick you out too? Rusty asked, nodding toward Prestige Motors. The rider smiled. How'd you guess? Sterling's got a type. Anyone who doesn't look like they stepped out of a cologne ad. Rusty pushed himself to his feet with a grunt. Want some water? It's not fancy, but it's cold. I'd appreciate that. Rusty disappeared into the office and came back with 2 bottles of water from the mini fridge that was older than most of his customers. He handed one to the stranger and sat back down. They drank in comfortable silence for a moment. I'm looking for motorcycles, the stranger finally said. Rusty gestured at his lot. Well, you came to the right place. Sort of. I've got 3 in stock. The Dyna's got 40,000 miles, but runs like a dream. The Softail needs some electrical work. And the Sportster is actually my personal bike, but if the price is right, I need 5 new ones. CVO road glides. Fully customized. Rusty stopped mid-sip. Son, I think you got the wrong shop. Those are $60,000 bikes. Each. I can't. Can you order them? I mean, technically, yeah. I still have my dealer license. But, Rusty's voice dropped. I don't have that kind of credit with the distributor anymore. And I sure as hell don't have the floor space. Those bikes would take weeks to arrive, and I'd need to put down a deposit that I don't. He stopped himself. No point airing his dirty laundry to a stranger. What if I paid up front? Full amount. Cash. Rusty laughed, but it was a sad sound. Son, that's a nice dream, but people don't walk around with that kind of money. The stranger set down his water bottle and swung the gym bag off his shoulder. He set it on the plastic chair and unzipped it. Rusty's brain stuttered to a halt. Money. Stacks of it. Banded bundles of $100 bills, packed so tight the bag could barely contain them. It looked like something out of a movie. The kind of movie where people got shot. Jesus Christ, Rusty whispered. Are you as that? Legal? Absolutely. Boring? Extremely. It's tax revenue from my club's businesses. We prefer cash transactions for large purchases. The stranger, Vince, he'd said his name was Vince, started pulling out bundles. Here's what I need. 5 CVO road glides. Top spec. I'll give you the customization list. And I need them in a week. Rusty's hands were shaking. A week? That's impossible. The factory alone. Call your distributor. Tell them you have a cash buyer. Tell them you need the bikes pulled from existing inventory and delivered express. Tell them whatever you need to tell them. Vince pulled out more money. And while you're at it, what do you owe on this place? What? The garage. You're in trouble. I can see it in your eyes. What do you owe? Rusty's throat was tight. That's not your problem. It could be. Answer the question. 72,000. Rusty heard himself say. To the bank. Plus about 15 in vendor bills. Vince pulled out more bundles. Started counting. Okay, here's the deal. I'm giving you $350,000. $320 for the bikes. $30 for your debts. You're going to make this happen. I can't. Why would you? Because that asshole next door just taught me something important. Vince's smile was cold. Respect matters. You offered me water. You didn't judge. You treated me like a human being. That's worth more than they'll ever understand. Rusty felt his eyes burning. I don't know what to say. Say you'll make the call. The Harley-Davidson Distributors regional manager, a woman named Carol Chun, thought she was being pranked. Rusty, I'm looking at your account right now. You're 4 months behind on your last order. I can't extend you credit for a box of spark plugs, let alone 5 CVOs. I'm not asking for credit, Rusty said, his voice shaking with either excitement or terror. He couldn't tell which. I have a cash buyer. Full amount. Up front. Silence on the other end of the line. Carol, how much cash are we talking about? 320,000. 4.5 CVO road glides. Top spec. Milwaukee 8 117 engines. I'm going to give you the customization list, and I need them here in 7 days. More silence. Carol, this is real. I'm looking at the money right now. It's sitting on my desk in stacks. Rusty, I've known you for 20 years. You've never lied to me. But what you're describing is impossible? Yeah, that's what I thought too. But here's the thing. You've got bikes in inventory right now. I know you do. The CEO's been pushing CVO sales, which means you're sitting on stock you need to move. I'm offering to take 5 of them off your hands. Cash. Today. I'll wire the deposit right now if you give me the routing information. He could hear Carol typing. I've got 3 CVOs in the Chicago warehouse, she said slowly. 2 more in Dallas. If I pull them and route them through express freight. Jesus, the shipping alone would be another 12 grand. Add it to the total. Rusty, who is this buyer? Because if this is some kind of money laundering, it's a motorcycle club. They run legitimate businesses. This is bonus money for their guys. I've got the buyer right here. You want to talk to him? Vince took the phone. Ms. Chun, my name is Vincent Kowalski. I'm the treasurer for the Golden Eagles Motorcycle Club. We have 17 business entities across 4 states, all properly registered and tax compliant. I'd be happy to provide our EIN numbers and copies of our last 3 years of tax returns. This purchase is a legitimate business expense. We're rewarding club members for exceptional service. Carol's voice was careful. Mr. Kowalski, I apologize for the scrutiny, but you're protecting your company. I respect that. I'm a financial professional myself. Due diligence is never an insult. Vince's voice was calm, professional. The voice of a man who'd negotiated million-dollar construction contracts. Here's what I propose. Rusty wires you 50% today as a deposit. You pull the bikes and start the customization work. When they arrive, I pay the balance in cash, and you provide receipts for everything. Clean, simple, documented. The balance in cash, Carol repeated. That's $160,000. Plus shipping. Plus customization. I'm rounding it to 175 to cover any incidentals. And Ms. Chun, when those bikes arrive, if you want to be here to personally verify the transaction and the source of funds, you're welcome to attend. Another long pause. Okay, Carol said. Okay, I must be out of my mind, but okay. Give me 2 hours to arrange the logistics. Rusty, you'll have my wire instructions by 3 p.m. Mr. Kowalski, I'm taking you up on that offer. I'll be there when the bikes are delivered. When Rusty hung up, his hands were shaking so badly, he nearly dropped the phone. She's doing it, he whispered. She's actually doing it. Vince was counting out money. Here's the deposit. And here's the $87,000 for your debts. Pay them today. All of them. I don't understand why you're doing this. Because I can. Vince zipped up what remained in the gym bag. And because watching that pompous asshole next door realize what he lost is going to be the best entertainment I've had in years. Rusty made the calls that afternoon in a daze. First, the bank. The manager, a man named Peterson who'd been coolly professional in their previous conversations about foreclosure, suddenly became Rusty's best friend when he heard the words, "I'd like to pay off my loan in full today. Mr. Patterson, there's no need to rush into anything. We can work out a payment plan. I'm bringing you $72,000. Cash. Today. I want the lien released by end of business." Silence. Then, cash? Mr. Patterson, we'll need to file a currency transaction report with. File whatever you need to file. I'll be there in an hour. The vendors were even better. Rusty called each one personally. Men he'd owed money to for months, who'd been patient because they knew him, knew he was good for it eventually. Tommy? Rusty, I've got your $1,200. I'm bringing it by this afternoon. No, not a payment plan. All of it. Cash. Yeah, I know. Long story. Buy you a beer, and I'll tell you about it. By 5 p.m., Rusty Patterson was, for the first time in 3 years, debt-free. He sat in his office, looking at the stack of paid-in-full receipts, and cried. 7 days later, at 6 a.m., a massive freight truck pulled up outside Rusty's garage. The driver, a woman named Rodriguez who looked like she hadn't slept in days, climbed out with a clipboard. "I've got 5 motorcycles for Patterson. Sign here." Rusty signed with shaking hands. The truck's lift gate lowered, and Rusty's heart nearly stopped. 5 CVO road glides, each one wrapped in protective covering, each one gleaming like a chrome dream even through the plastic. The Milwaukee 8-117 engines. Custom paint jobs, each one a different shade of metallic blue that shifted color in the light. Upgraded exhaust systems that probably cost more than Rusty's first car. Premium sound systems. LED lighting packages. These weren't motorcycles. They were rolling works of art. Rodriguez and her partner spent an hour carefully unloading each bike, setting them up in Rusty's garage. The bikes took up every inch of available space, turning his humble shop into something that looked like a high-end showroom. Carol Chun arrived at 7 a.m., stepping out of a rental car with a briefcase and an expression that suggested she still wasn't entirely convinced this was real. "Mr. Patterson, Ms. Chun." Rusty gestured at the bikes. "They're beautiful. They should be. I pulled every favor I had to make this happen in a week." She looked around the garage, taking in the oil-stained concrete, the ancient tools, the general air of honest labor. Then she looked next door at Prestige Motors, already open, its showroom glittering in the morning sun. "I'm not going to lie. When you called, I checked to see if Prestige Motors had placed a similar order. I thought maybe you were fronting for them." "Not exactly," Rusty said. At 8 a.m., Vince arrived. But he didn't arrive alone. The sound hit first. A wave of thunder that rattled windows and set off car alarms. 50 motorcycles, rolling in formation, their engines synchronized in a symphony of controlled violence. The Golden Eagles Motorcycle Club, arriving for a pickup. They filled the street, blocked traffic, turned the quiet commercial district into something that looked like a scene from a movie. Men and women in leather vests, each one bearing the Golden Eagles patch. The kind of people who made civilians nervous and cops check their radios. Vince was at the front, still wearing that same oil-stained vest, but he'd traded his Frankenstein bike for a pristine Road King. He pulled up outside Rusty's garage and killed the engine. Behind him, 4 more riders pulled in. These were the nomads, the road warriors of the club, the ones who'd sacrificed their bikes in the Iron Wolves incident. They looked like they'd been through a war, which, in a sense, they had. "Rusty." Vince's voice carried over the rumble of idling engines. "You ready for us?" Rusty could barely speak. "They're inside." The nomads filed into the garage, and Rusty would remember their expressions for the rest of his life. Pure, unfiltered joy, like kids on Christmas morning, if Christmas involved $64,000 motorcycles. "Holy shit." One of them, a mountain of a man called Tiny, whispered. "Boss, these are yours," Vince said. "All 5. Courtesy of the Golden Eagles and our new partner, Rusty Patterson." Carol Chin stepped forward, all business. "Mr. Kowalski, I'll need to verify the payment before we can process the title transfers. Vince set his gym bag on Rusty's desk and unzipped it. The money was already counted, already banded, already organized. $175,000 in cash, arranged in neat stacks. Carol had brought a portable bill counter. She'd learned to be prepared, and spent the next 20 minutes running every bill through it. It's all here, she said finally. All legal tender. All accounted for. Receipts? Vince asked. Carol produced a folder. Itemized. Every penny. The bikes, the customization, the express shipping. All documented for your tax records. Vince smiled. Pleasure doing business with you. And through the window of Prestige Motors, Bradley Sterling watched it all unfold. Bradley had arrived for his shift at 7:30 a.m., already irritated because his car payment was late and his bookie had sent him another text that was more threat than reminder. He'd made himself a coffee from the premium machine, one of the perks of working at Prestige Motors, and was reviewing his schedule when he heard it. The motorcycles. He looked up to see the street filling with bikes. Dozens of them. No, more than that. 50 at least, all bearing the same patch, Golden Eagles. And at the front of the pack, climbing off a road king like he owned the world, was the vagrant. The man Bradley had thrown out a week ago. Bradley's coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. No, he whispered. No, no, no. He watched as the vagrant, Vince, one of the bikers called him, led 4 other men into Rusty's garage. Watched as that entire motorcycle gang parked in the street, engines rumbling, drawing a crowd. Brittany appeared at his elbow. Bradley? What's going on? That's him, Bradley said. That's the guy I kicked out. The homeless guy? He wasn't homeless. Bradley's voice was hollow. He wasn't homeless at all. Through the window, he could see Rusty's garage transformed. 5 CVO road glides, the exact bikes Bradley had been too arrogant to sell, gleaming in the morning light. He could see money changing hands. Stacks of it. Mountains of it. Bradley pulled out his phone with shaking hands and did the math. 5 bikes. $64,000 each. Plus customization. That had to be another $10,000 per bike minimum. Plus the rush delivery, which probably cost a fortune. His commission, if he'd made that sale, would have been at least $35,000. $35,000. Enough to clear his gambling debts with money left over. Enough to get his bookie off his back. Enough to maybe, finally, breathe. And he'd thrown it away. Because of a leather vest. Because of some mud on some boots. Because he'd looked at a man and seen only what he wanted to see. I have to. Bradley was moving before he knew what he was doing. He ran out of Prestige Motors, his dress shoes slipping on the polished floor, and sprinted across to Rusty's garage. The Golden Eagles parted for him like a sea, their expressions ranging from amused to hostile. Bradley didn't care. He pushed through until he found Vince, who was watching one of the nomads run his hands over his new bike with reverence. Sir. Bradley's voice cracked. Sir, please, I need to talk to you. Vince turned slowly. Up close, Bradley could see the intelligence in those eyes. The calculation. This was not a man who forgot slights. Can I help you? Vince's tone was polite. Devastatingly polite. I made a mistake, Bradley said. The words tumbled out. Last week. I was wrong. I was so wrong. We can make you a deal. A better deal. Whatever you paid here, we can beat it. We have better facilities, better respect? Vince asked quietly. Bradley's mouth opened and closed. I apologize. Sincerely. I was having a bad day, and I took it out on you, and that was unprofessional. But please, his voice dropped to a desperate whisper. Please let me make this right. I need this sale. You don't understand? I'm in trouble. You need money, Vince said. I understand. We all need money. The difference is, some of us need it because we made bad choices. Gambling debts, aren't they? Bradley's face went white. How did you? You've got bookie written all over you. The desperation. The way you sized me up like a mark instead of a customer. You weren't trying to sell me a bike. You were trying to score your next fix. Vince's expression was almost pitying. Here's the thing, Bradley. You had a customer walk in with $350,000 in cash. A customer ready to buy, ready to pay, ready to make your month. And you threw him out because he didn't look the way you thought money should look. I'm sorry, Bradley whispered. I don't need your apology. I needed your service. And when I didn't get it, I took my business elsewhere. Vince gestured at Rusty, who was helping Carol Chun process the title transfers. This man gave me water, treated me like a human being, asked me about what I needed instead of telling me what I couldn't afford. So he got the sale. He got all of it. The bikes, the goodwill, the future business, because the Golden Eagles have 200 members across 5 chapters, and they all need bikes, and they all need service, and they're all going to come here now. The implications of that hit Bradley like a physical blow. This is what respect looks like when it translates into profit, Vince said. Learn it. He turned back to his brothers, dismissing Bradley with the finality of a door closing. Bradley stumbled back to Prestige Motors, barely seeing where he was going. Brittany was at the door, her eyes wide. Mr. Sterling called, she said. The owner. He wants to see you in his office. Bradley's legs felt like water. When? Now. James Sterling, no relation to Bradley, despite the shared surname, was a self-made millionaire who'd built Prestige Motors from a single storefront into a regional powerhouse. He was 65, silver-haired, and had the kind of calm demeanor that made his anger all the more terrifying. He was angry now. Sit, he said. Bradley sat. I just got off the phone with Carol Chun from Harley-Davidson Regional Distribution. Do you know what she told me? Bradley couldn't speak. She told me that she's been calling us for 6 months, trying to move CVO inventory. 6 months. She's offered us priority placement, reduced dealer fees, co-op advertising money. And we've been dragging our feet because you. James leaned forward. You convinced me that CVOs don't sell in this market. They don't, Bradley managed. The average customer can't. The average customer isn't every customer. James's voice cracked like a whip. Carol just sold 5 CVOs in 1 week. To a customer who walked in here first. A customer you threw out. I didn't know. You didn't bother to know? That's the problem. James pulled up something on his computer and turned the screen to face Bradley. It was the dealership's security footage from a week ago. Vince walking in. Bradley's confrontation. The security escort. I look at this footage, and you want to know what I see? I see a man who came in ready to spend money. I see you judging him in 5 seconds based on his appearance. I see you calling security on a legitimate customer because he didn't fit your image of what wealth looks like. Mr. Sterling, if you'll just... Carol Chun told me something else interesting. She said that the Golden Eagles have chapters in 5 states. 200 members. All of them ride. All of them need service, parts, upgrades. She said that Vince Kowalski, the man you ejected, is their treasurer. He controls their purchasing decisions. James's smile was bitter. Do you know what that means? Bradley did. He did the math in his head and wanted to throw up. That means you didn't just lose 1 sale. You lost every future sale. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential revenue. Gone because you couldn't see past a dirty vest. I'll fix it, Bradley said desperately. I'll go back. I'll apologize again. You'll clean out your desk, James said. You're fired. Effective immediately. Please. The only reason I'm not suing you for the lost revenue is because it would cost more in legal fees than you're worth. Get out. Bradley stood on shaking legs. I have debts. I need this job. I need. Then you should have thought of that before you gambled it away. And before you gambled away my customer. James turned back to his computer. You have 1 hour to collect your things. After that, I'm having security escort you out. Seems appropriate, given your fondness for the procedure. Bradley walked out of Prestige Motors at 10 a.m., carrying a cardboard box with a desk plant and some family photos he'd never bothered to frame. He stood on the sidewalk, watching as the Golden Eagles fired up their engines. Vince was at the front again, his new road glide rumbling like controlled thunder. Behind him, the 5 nomads sat astride their new bikes, grinning like they'd won the lottery. Which, in a sense, they had. As the motorcycles pulled away, Vince looked over at Bradley. Just for a second. Just long enough to make eye contact. And in that moment, Bradley saw everything he'd lost. Not just the money, not just the job, but the fundamental understanding that respect, real respect, the kind you give to every person who walks through your door, was worth more than any commission. Vince nodded once. Then he twisted the throttle and roared away, leading his brothers down the street in a wave of sound and fury. Bradley stood there until they were out of sight. Then he sat down on the curb, put his head in his hands, and wept. The Golden Eagles rolled through the city like a steel and chrome river, 50 bikes strong, the 5 new CVOs in positions of honor at the front. People stopped on sidewalks to watch. Cars pulled over. Children pointed and waved. Tiny, riding his new bike, pulled up alongside Vince at a stoplight. "Boss, I still can't believe this." "Believe it," Vince said. "You earned it. I just took a few hits from the wolves. Part of the job. You took a lot more than a few hits. You kept them from getting to our shipment. You lost your bike protecting club assets. That's not part of the job. That's going above and beyond." Vince glanced at him. "How's she right?" Tiny's grin could have lit up a stadium. "Like a fucking dream, boss. Like riding lightning." At the next light, Bull pulled up on the other side. "Vault, you beautiful bastard. You should have seen the look on that salesman's face. I thought he was going to pass out." "He did worse," Vince said. "He cried." "Good," Bull said, and there was no mercy in his voice. "Some lessons you gotta learn the hard way." They rode out of the city and onto the highway, opening up the throttles, letting the bikes show what they could do. The CVOs handled like predators, smooth, powerful, responsive. The Milwaukee 8 engines sang a song of American engineering at its finest. Vince felt the wind in his face, the sun on his back, and the weight of his brothers around him. This was what it was about. Not the money, not the revenge, sweet as it was. But this. The ride, the brotherhood, the knowledge that loyalty and respect still meant something in a world that often forgot both. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it until they stopped for gas an hour later. It was a text from Rusty. "Carol Chun just called. She wants to make my garage an official Harley premium dealer. Says she's been looking for someone in this area with integrity and customer service skills." I told her yes. "Thank you doesn't seem like enough, but thank you." Vince smiled and typed back. "You earned it. See you next month for the first service appointments." Because the Golden Eagles were nothing if not loyal to those who'd earned their loyalty. 3 months later, Prestige Motors was still standing, but barely. The quarterly numbers had been disastrous. James Sterling had brought in a new sales team, but the damage to their reputation in the motorcycle community had been done. Word had spread about how they'd treated Vince. The story had grown in the telling. Bikers loved a good tale, and now Prestige Motors was known as the place that was too good for its customers. Revenue dropped by 40% in the first month. Rusty's garage, meanwhile, had undergone a transformation. Carol Chun had made good on her promise. The place was now an official Harley-Davidson premium dealer. The building had been renovated, not modernized. Rusty had been firm about that, but cleaned up, expanded, made professional while keeping its character. The hand-painted sign came down, replaced by official Harley-Davidson signage. But Rusty kept the old sign, hung it inside above the service desk, a reminder of where he'd been. The Golden Eagles brought their business, all of it. Service, parts, accessories, new bike sales. But more than that, they brought their reputation. And in the motorcycle community, reputation was everything. Riders from across the state started coming to Rusty's. Not just because of the Harley connection, but because of the story. The story of how an old veteran had treated a customer with respect when no one else would. How that respect had been rewarded. How sometimes, just sometimes, the good guy won. As for Bradley Sterling, he'd left town. Last anyone heard, he was selling cars at a used lot in Oklahoma, still trying to pay off his gambling debts, still looking for the big score that would fix everything. He never found it. Vince stood in Rusty's garage on a Saturday morning, watching Rusty supervise a service appointment for one of the new CVOs. The old man had hired 2 new mechanics, both veterans, both guys who'd been struggling to find work, and was training them with the same patience he showed to every bike that rolled through his door. "You know," Rusty said, walking over with 2 cups of coffee, "I still can't believe all this happened because some asshole judged you by your vest." Vince accepted the coffee and smiled. "Best $300,000 I ever spent. Well, $350 if you count paying off your debts. I'm paying you back for that. It's going to take time, but Rusty, you've already paid me back. You gave me something I couldn't buy. Proof that there are still good people in this world." Vince raised his coffee cup in a toast. "To respect." "To respect," Rusty echoed. They drank their coffee in comfortable silence, watching the mechanics work, listening to the sound of engines and power tools and honest labor. Outside, a gleaming CVO road glide sat in the morning sun, its chrome catching the light like a promise kept. The leather vest hanging on its handlebars was old, oil-stained, and worn nearly transparent in places. But to anyone who knew the story, that vest was worth more than all the polish in the world. It was worth respect. And in the end, that was priceless.